Welcome to the Journey Back Home podcast. I'm Isa Qureshi. This is a place where we reconnect with ourselves and return to a life that feels like our own. Let's begin. A few days ago, after I released my episode on self-abandonment and its cost, someone left a comment that they understood the harmful effects of self-abandonment, but wanted to know more of the solutions. And it really got me thinking because this is such an important question. A lot of us, we are much aware of ourselves. We are aware when we abandon ourselves, the people pleasing, the overthinking, the saying yes when you want to say no, the overcommitting to things, constantly putting everyone else's needs in front of our own, or worrying about disappointing someone, suppressing our own wants, feelings, and needs, saying yes when we want to say no. But knowing you're doing it and knowing how to stop doing it are two different things. So if you found yourself wondering, how do we stop doing this? How do we stop abandoning ourselves? How do I know what I actually want? How do I begin trusting myself? Then this is what we will be exploring today. Not from the perspective of having all the answers, but as someone who has spent years learning how to reconnect with herself after being disconnected for so long. Because what I've come to realize that healing self-abandonment isn't one big life-changing moment. It is a series of tiny moments, tiny pauses, moments where we become more honest with ourselves and we stop abandoning or leaving ourselves behind. If self-abandonment is something that you've been struggling with, then I hope this episode helps you understand yourself a bit more deeply and help you begin reconnecting with yourself. Most people don't wake up and realize that they've been abandoning themselves because self-abandonment often looks like doing the right thing. It often looks like being kind or being the nice person, taking responsibility or keeping peace. When we repeatedly choose against ourselves, when we constantly put everyone else's needs ahead of our own, when we suppress our feelings, when we're feeling exhausted but we don't stop or take a break, when we have too much on our plate already and we still say yes to more, when we are constantly ignoring how we're feeling because we want to take into account everyone else's feelings. That's what self-abandonment looks like. It feels normal because if you've spent so long ignoring yourself, ignoring your own wants, needs, and feelings, or softening your truth, then self-abandonment becomes normal. It becomes your default mode of how you exist every single day. So a lot of people are probably struggling with this, unaware that they are betraying themselves. It's kind of like when you're living in autopilot mode, you don't know that you're in autopilot mode unless something or someone wakes you up from it. Because when you're in it, that becomes your norm. That becomes the environment you're in. That becomes your safety. That becomes your comfort zone. So it doesn't stand out for you anymore because that's how you've learned to operate. That's how you feel comfortable because this feels familiar. And oftentimes we do this so often that we become disconnected from ourselves, that we can't even recognize it anymore, and it starts feeling normal. So something that can help us reflect or realize that we are abandoning ourselves is understanding or asking ourselves, what are the moments where we are overriding ourselves? If you can relate to these feelings, or if you can relate to people pleasing or saying yes when you want to say no, or softening yourself or shrinking yourself, then you might be wondering, why do I keep doing this? If I know that I am abandoning myself, why are we doing this? Why do we keep shrinking ourselves? Why do we keep masking and hiding and pretending when we know that we're doing it? Well, the reason is not that simple, because self-abandonment isn't something we learned when we were born. It wasn't part of our DNA. A lot of us started abandoning ourselves as a protective mechanism. It started more for our own safety and protection. And oftentimes it started when we were very young, when we picked up those messages and that information from people around us who told us that it wasn't safe to express ourselves, that anytime we spoke our truth, we were either shut down, we were dismissed, or we were scolded. And a lot of times when I reflect back on how and when I started my people pleasing or when I started betraying myself, it stems a lot of from my early childhood when my truth wasn't accepted. When we are born, we are given definitions, we are given labels, we are given a box in which we are told to confine ourselves. Because if we hit these markers, then we would be acceptable by people, then we would be acceptable by society. So we learn not to speak loudly, we learn to sit a certain way, walk a certain way, talk a certain way, wear a certain type of clothes, carry ourselves in a way. Because if we were to be our truthful selves, we were not accepted. But when you are given the message that what you're saying is not acceptable, that you need to soften the way you speak, that you need to modify or tweak because you might offend someone, you might disappoint someone, then you have to be protective of other people's feelings versus your own. You learn that it's not safe to be yourself. Self-abandonment then becomes a protective mechanism. It is safety. And it often arises from fear of conflict. So you be the nice person, you stay quiet when things affect you, you keep your truth to yourself, your true feelings. From fear of disappointment. So you learn to adapt to how people want you to be. What will make everyone happy? What will make you acceptable? A lot of that comes from wanting love, wanting approval, wanting validation, wanting to feel like we belong. In the early days, when we used to exist in the form of tribes, where there was no proper civilization, there was no safety, and safety meant to be in groups. And so if you were left alone, you could be attacked or eaten by the wild animals, the saber-toothed tiger. And so that instinct, that primal survival instinct is still there. And so anytime we feel like our belonging is in danger, that we will be kicked out, that we will be discarded or isolated or left alone, our fear response kicks in. And it makes us feel unsafe, that it's almost a threat to our survival, which we know that's not true, but that's how it feels like. That's why we so desperately want to belong. That's why we are so afraid of being left alone, that we would rather stay in toxic relationships, in exhausting workplaces, that we would rather be loved and liked than to be our true selves. Because this pattern of us betraying ourselves is proof of our survival. Because if we don't do this, then we won't be loved. Then we won't be accepted. Then we won't be validated. Then we won't belong. And that can be terrifying. But the problem with this is that those patterns that we learned in our early childhood from those traumatic experiences, we carry them into adulthood. Even now, we are afraid to disappoint people. I often had conversations with people who are in their 70s and 80s who are still afraid of disappointing their parents. And that makes me feel so sad that they grew up knowing that they were not enough. Even to the point of being in their 70s and 80s when they themselves are grandparents. They still want the love and approval and validation of their own parents. So we end up being the easy one, the easygoing, the agreeable, the nice, accommodating person, the palatable one. We play it safe. We don't abandon ourselves because we hate ourselves or that there's something wrong with us. We mostly abandon ourselves for survival because it felt safer to be liked than to be fully ourselves. So if you've spent your entire life focusing on everyone else, focusing outside of yourself, chances are that you've become disconnected from your own self. Chances are that you are not aware of how you feel, what you actually want. We are so attuned to people around us. We can very quickly anticipate other people's needs. We respond not according to what we feel like saying, but what they want to hear. If someone asks, how did I do? Your first response is, oh, you were great. I loved what you did. Even though deep down, you didn't 100% love it. Even though you felt it could be made better in different ways. But you don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to hurt them. So you say what feels acceptable rather than what feels true to you. In the past 3 years alone, I've spent over $30,000 in my own personal development, doing courses, attending events, reading books. I was seeking answers out there. In the next best thing, I collected certificates and degrees like trophies, trying to prove something, trying to feel like I am now qualified to proceed with what I want to do in my life. But the more I collected, the more I felt I needed more because this is not enough yet. I need more proof. I need more evidence that I am worthy, that I can do this, that I'm qualified. The problem wasn't knowledge or skills. I gained plenty of that. The problem was self-trust. I was lacking self-trust to begin. I was seeking answers externally. I was looking for them out there, waiting for certainty, waiting to feel ready, waiting for permission, waiting for validation. As if each of those glorified pieces of paper were proving to me that I'm good enough, that I'm worthy. Sometimes we don't lack answers. We already know what there is to know. We already have the answers, but they're not out there. They're in here. But we are so used to looking externally that we forget to tune in internally. We stop seeking the truth from within us. We've been so used to being told what to do. We've been so used to living our lives according to everyone else's expectations or following the cultural rule book that we forget who we truly are, what we truly want. We never stop to ask ourselves, what do I want? How do I feel? What matters to me? When I first started reconnecting with myself and looking at all the ways that I've been abandoning myself all this time, I didn't have a specific framework or template to follow. But I used certain processes and certain reflective questions to help me navigate my way back. And over the years, I've noticed that I tend to come back to the same process that helps me reconnect with myself, realign myself. Every single time I feel that I am straying from my truth, I am going back into the old people-pleasing habits, or I am betraying myself, I often keep coming back to this, which I've put together in a framework called truth, which I think might be helpful. So the T of truth stands for tune in. And tune in is just to pause, to check in with ourselves, to take a deep breath, and just to be in the moment. Notice, what am I feeling right now? What's coming up for me? Just a 2-second pause can take you out from your default mode, from being in your head to coming back into your body. Because we have been living externally for such a long time. We have been living from a place of wanting approval and performing for approval and validation for such a long time that we have become really disconnected from who we are inside, what we really want, how are we feeling. Let's say someone asks a favor from you. Instead of immediately jumping to the default, yeah, sure, I'll do it, without even asking what the favor is to begin with, or whether you even have the capacity to help or not, you pause. You take a deep breath. You notice how you feel in your body. You ask yourself, what am I feeling? What emotions are coming up? Are you feeling constricted? Are you feeling exhausted? Are you feeling restricted? Or are you feeling expansive? Are you feeling open? Notice what it feels like. If we're constantly rushing past ourselves, we won't really notice what's happening in here. So once you learn to pause, take a deep breath, and notice how you feel, the next thing to ask is the R, which is reflect. That is to become curious. Explore what's happening underneath that. So whatever you felt and noticed in your body, or even you didn't notice anything, maybe you are completely numb, sit with that. Become curious. Why do you feel numb? If you feel triggered, why do you feel triggered? And exploring what's underneath just by simply asking, why am I feeling this way? If someone asks me to help them move over the weekend, and my immediate response is, yeah, sure, why not? But deep down, I'm feeling quite exhausted. I feel burdened. I feel overwhelmed. I would ask myself, why am I feeling so overwhelmed? Is it because you don't feel comfortable helping them? Or is it because you're really exhausted from the week you already had that you want to rest? Or is it because you have other plans for the weekend and you won't have the capacity to help out? Asking yourself what's happening underneath and getting curious and reflecting something that really helps you uncover what's happening beneath it. Some of the questions you can ask is, why am I feeling this way? Why is this bothering me or triggering me? What am I afraid of? What am I not acknowledging right now? Feelings are powerful. They're directional. If you look closer, if you connect with what you're feeling, they will point you towards the direction you need to go. Trusting your gut, your instincts, your feelings, which are more deeper down into your body rather than in your head. So what you're thinking might be, I need to help this person out because they're my friend, or because they helped me out last time, or because that would be the right thing to do, or because they need my help, or whatever reason you have. But if your feelings are the opposite, if you tune in to what you're feeling and you're feeling like exhausted, you're feeling overwhelmed, or you're feeling upset, you're feeling angry, or you're feeling like avoiding, getting curious as to why you're feeling this way is going to help you get more clear and connected to yourself. Because once we become curious to what's underneath, we can uncover what's really going on. Which takes me to the you that is uncover. That is asking yourself, what do I want? What do I need? What matters to me right now? What feels true to me right now? And that could be something as simple as, I need rest, or I need more information, or I need to develop more trust before I can proceed with this, or I need some more time or more space to think about it. So asking yourself what truth needs to be acknowledged, which takes me to the T, that is, tell the truth. More important than anything, more important than telling our truth to other people, the very first step is to telling ourselves the truth. Because when we're so used to hiding our own feelings, masking our own feelings, pretending like everything is okay, we often ignore what's happening. We might deep down know how we feel, what we actually want, but we suppress it. We just brush it under the rug. We pretend it's not there. We smile when we're feeling hurt because we don't want to disappoint someone else or to tell them how we really feel. Admitting to yourself is where the healing begins. Trying not to negotiate with yourself. I know I need to rest, but this person needs my help. Or, I know this relationship feels off, but we've spent 3 years together. I can make it work. Or, I know my work is exhausting, but so is everyone else's work, and no one seems to be complaining, so I shouldn't be complaining. Knowing your truth is not the same as doing something about it. Knowing is not same as acting. Once you know your truth, the next step is the H. Honor it. And that's where that knowing becomes the doing. That's where you act onto that truth. That is to take one small aligned action towards it. That could be simple as politely declining the offer, writing that resignation email. It could be something as taking a break, pausing, or having that conversation. Self-trust isn't built when we know our truth. It's built when we act on it, when we honor it. And every single time you honor your truth, you're building evidence that you can trust yourself, that is safe to be with you. Imagine you're in a situation where you feel unsafe, where you're in a relationship where you feel uncomfortable, but you don't say anything because there are some good parts to it as well, because you've been in this relationship for such a long time, but that person isn't respecting you or honoring you. If you keep telling yourself the lie of, no, but this person is good, we all have flaws, I've invested so much in this relationship already, I don't want to be alone, ask yourself, what is really happening beneath that? What are you feeling? Do you feel constricted when you're with this person, or do you feel expansive? Do you feel happy or do you feel sad? What happens in your body? Notice the patterns. Notice what it feels like. And then ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Is it because this person keeps on dismissing me? Is it because this person doesn't respect my boundaries? I'm not being supported in this relationship? And once you reflect on that, uncovering what is it that I really want? I want more respect. I want to have an honest communication. I want to have support. I want to feel loved. I want to feel seen. I want to feel understood and acknowledged. And then admitting to yourself the truth that I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. Or I need to have a conversation with this person. Or that I need to set proper boundaries. And then honor it by taking one small step and aligned action towards it, which could look like having that difficult conversation, telling that person what works and what isn't going to work, whatever that looks like for you. This is just an example to show how you can use the truth framework, how you can use these questions, moments of reflection, to tune inwards, to reconnect with yourself. Once we do that, the big thing where a lot of people, including myself, get stuck as a recovering people pleaser is, how do I avoid disappointing other people? What to do with people's reaction? And in moments like these, I often ask myself, what is the cost of disappointing them? And what is the cost of disappointing myself? Because if I'm willing to disappoint myself in order to not disappoint them, What am I losing? What is that costing me? And oftentimes, the cost of disappointing ourselves is far more than the cost of disappointing someone else because they'll get over it. But you're telling yourself that it's not safe to have your wants, needs, and feelings met, for your truth to be honored. And it often results in exhaustion, burnout, overwhelm, avoidance, resentment. You are not responsible for anyone's feelings. I loved this post I read the other day. What someone thinks of me is none of my business. It's none of our business what anyone thinks of us. We're not responsible for other people's emotions. And if someone is getting upset, let them. If someone is disappointed, let them. But don't disappoint yourself. Don't betray yourself. Because that's how we lose our own trust. You might be wondering, what if I already don't trust myself? How do you find trust? How do you build trust? Self-trust isn't something that's found. You don't have to look for it somewhere. Self-trust is something that's built. Just like with any other person, with any relationship, trust is built over time. It's by tiny actions. It's by accumulating evidence over time that builds trust. And it begins by honoring your truth. It begins by taking action in congruency to your truth, by taking action in line with who you truly are and what feels right for you. If you've been abandoning yourself for a very long time, if you're a people pleaser, if you've been betraying yourself or disappointing yourself for other people, it will take time. It starts with tiny things. It starts in small moments by saying no when you feel the impulse to say yes. It starts by setting up boundaries. It starts by keeping those small promises to yourself. When you told yourself, I will wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning, by waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning, you keep that trust. If you wake up at 10, you're telling yourself, I don't trust myself, because you can't keep your own promises. How can people trust you if you don't trust yourself? How do you expect to have a trustful, authentic, honest relationship with anyone when you don't have one with yourself? And this is the harsh truth that I have been facing for the last couple of years. Because if I'm not being authentic with myself and not honest with myself, how can I expect others to be honest with me? How can I expect others to show up authentically? How can others trust me when I struggle with trusting myself? But every single time you honor your truth, you keep a promise, you set a boundary, you say what feels true to you, you are telling yourself that I won't leave you, that I'm here for you, that it's safe to be with me, that I'm good enough as I am. And that is how self-trust is built. Alignment does not mean certainty. Clarity and certainty doesn't come from waiting for permission, for readiness, for the right moment, for the right feelings to arrive. It comes from taking action. It comes from knowing what you're feeling and acting on it. It comes from staying in your truth, staying grounded. The goal isn't to make perfect decisions. You're not going to get this right in the first go. I'm still practicing this every single day. There are so many moments every day where I abandon myself, where I get back into people pleasing, and I have to reflect back on, why did I do this? What was coming up for me? What did I feel in that moment? And oftentimes it's just a default response because I've been used to doing this for nearly 3 decades that it just feels normal to do it, almost abnormal not to do it. And it feels very uncomfortable to say something I feel, knowing that this might not result in the response that I'm hoping, that others will be disappointed, that people might not like me, or they might not accept me. Knowing that, making that decision, of staying with your truth, because that's the most important thing. There's no such thing as a perfect decision. There's no such thing as complete healing. It's a practice which you do every single day, in every moment, every time something comes up. Someone says something, someone asks you something, or you have to make a decision, whether that's even something to eat. So as you move through the week, I want you to notice, where are you overriding yourself? Where are you ignoring your feelings? Where are you softening your truth? Where are you holding back? And why? Because maybe healing self-abandonment doesn't come from a massive life moment. Maybe it comes from a small moment, a pause, a boundary, a conversation, a choice, one honest moment at a time. And maybe that's how we begin returning to ourselves. Thank you so much for listening. If this resonated with you, share this with someone who might need to hear it too. Subscribe for more episodes. I will see you in the next one.